Now, the Helen Suzman Foundation says it's still deciding whether or not to approach the court to set aside this process, while some say the interviews were sexist, they displayed political bias and disrespect at times. Some say that this does not mean, though, that the Commission should go easy on candidates, but also say that it should be fair as well as relevant. So how does the JSC think it fared during these interviews? Let's speak to the spokesperson of the JSC, Adv Dali Mpofu. Advocate Mpofu, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. In your view, did the JSC fulfill the mandate?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Bongiwe. Yes, no, we did. As we indicated at the end of the process, that this was a very unique, unprecedented kind of process. First of its kind, where the president had given more than one name to the JSC. And I'm quite sure that we all had learnings from it as a country. It was very important that it was at the in the full glare of the public. But I'm quite sure that by and large we fulfilled the mandate. We had very useful and robust discussions and deliberations, which, as you saw, lasted for the entire day. But we're very happy with the product, yes.
I'll get to the questions in just a moment, but there are also some suggestions, because you talk about a unique process where it was for the first time where you find yourselves having to go through 4 candidates, but others are saying that it was not your job to recommend, the candidate that you preferred at the end. KSEC, for example, sees this as trying to usurp the president's powers.
Well, they are entitled to their view. The Constitution is very clear as to what the role of the JSC was, which was to assess the candidates that the president had given us and subject them to a vote after very thorough deliberations. That's exactly what happened. I don't know what they're talking about, because that's what happens in almost every interviewing process that we do. And then the outcomes are relayed to the president.
And you are one of those in the public domain that's receiving backlash for some of the questions that were asked during those particular interviews. Some are accusing you of being so against the candidacy of the Judge President Dunstan Mlambo to even ascend possibly to the position of Chief Justice, that they say that you had to use some unsubstantiated claims of sexual harassment for whatever gain, as they say. Do you believe, though, that you were unfair when you asked that question because it was disallowed at some point?
No, I'm uncomfortable about speaking about myself, because the other commissioners don't get to have a chance to explain their questions. Number one. Number two, I'm speaking here for the JSC and not for myself. But seeing that you have raised it just as an example, I can assure you that whatever questions were put, the evidence of the question that I specifically put is the fact that the interviewee himself confirmed it. So I don't know what other evidence people want from either me or from him. The interviewee is somebody who's a member of the JSC, so they know if they had felt that they were not aware of what I was talking about, that would have been the end of it. But once they confirm that there is such an issue, which is quite a serious issue, should be for any South African, then it had to be dealt with. But to the credit of the interviewee, he, in my view, dealt with the question excellently and dispelled any notion, as I did, that there was any substance to the rumor.
Advocate Mpofu, with the greatest humility, I know you say you don't want to talk to yourself, but there's something that's in the public domain that one cannot ignore. And I'd like us to listen to an interview I did with Professor Kathy Powell, who made reference to one of the remarks that you made during the sittings. And I cannot ignore this. And I know you say you don't want to talk about yourself, but I would like to give you a response to this.
Judge Meyer has actually not had the chance to prove that she's worthy of being the Chief Justice. I believe she is, but that interview didn't give her the chance to show that. Her own presentation gave us a very good starting point. But the rest of the questions have been accurately described by commentators as sweetheart questions. So the rest of the questions seem designed to show how nice the JSC is towards women, rather than to test Judge Meyer's mettle. She was more than ready for it. They could have asked her about cases. They could have interrogated her on her jurisprudence. They could have given her the kind of interview that they gave the three men. But they were so busy proving how accepting they are of women that they proved that they can't accept women, because they couldn't accept her as a judge and a lawyer. They had to keep saying, oh, but you're a woman, shame.
Prof, there are calls for these interviews to be redone. I mean, one professor from Rhodes University saying that she was particularly unhappy with the questions that were posed to Justice Meyer, as well as some of the questions to Judge President, Dunstan Mlambo. Would you be then saying that there is a need for this process to be revisited?
I wouldn't support it now. But I wonder if that's just from exhaustion. On the one hand, we've all been through a very grueling week, but also from a lack of confidence that that particular JSC is really going to get it right next time. If Advocate Mpofu could seriously imply, as a public announcement, as a joke, that he'd had sex with Judge Meyer at the beginning of his interview questions, if he could seriously say that, at the same time claiming to be a feminist, then I think the members of the JSC, they need to be changed. I think the JSC itself needs some serious introspection and a serious, a couple of feminist lessons for a start. So to simply take the same bunch of people and to run the same interviews again, I can't see us getting much further.
Advocate Mpofu, two questions arise for me from that particular exchange. I'll start with the latter one. I know that in the sittings you explained it and you canvassed it and you tried to explain why you said that you had spent the night with Judge Meyer, and of course you spoke about how you were working and cross-nighting and all of that. But it doesn't look like that explanation holds water for some, because they see it as what you may have been maybe mischievous, judging from what Professor Powell is saying. Your response?
Yeah, I mean, really, are we going to discuss that kind of thing on national television? It was, I don't even know what she means by seriously but jokingly. I mean, it was clearly something said in jest. This is the real point of that, was to show that this is somebody that I know very well, which I have to disclose up front. But, it's a running joke between us for the past 30 years. If you had her version of that joke, you'd probably think that she was the sexist. But it was clearly that. I mean, but if people are going to be nitpicking at that level, then, I mean, there's nothing you can do. We've had interviews, we've had all those kinds of things. Let me just make an example for you. I mean, if a friend of mine talks to me and says, oh, you black people, I will not take it as a racist remark if I know that person and I know their values and their views. But if someone else, a stranger, like your professor there, I might take offense to it. So these things are situational. I don't think really we should spend the time of the country talking about something like that. The point that she makes about the what she calls sweetheart questions is also not true. It won't be borne by any scientific examination of the interview, which lasted for hours and hours, and she thinks it was all about just saying, oh, shame, she's a woman. There was no such thing. The questions were robust on what her perceived weak areas. Like everybody else, I made a point there that Madlanga Jay was grilled on the 3.5 years, and Zondo DCJ on the 2 years, 2.5 years left. Rightly so. President Meyer was grilled on the perception, which was communicated to us, I think, by the BLA, that she only invites white people to act in the SCA a lot. And because that was her perceived weak area. Lambo JP was also grilled on the perception of his lack of writing skills. That is as it should be, but it didn't mean people had to be shouted and get on top of the table in order to do that. Those questions were robust. The chairperson had asked us before to say, look, this is an important process. We must ask difficult questions, not shy away from that, but they must be done in a particularly cordial manner. And that was done, I think, even more with Matlanga J than anybody else. So, you know, when people want to find fault, they will find it, whatever you do. Let me just make this remark, Bongo. If anybody watched the interview of Mogoeng CJ, which was over 2 days, that was a robust and probably very unfair at times type of interview. By comparison, what happened this week was like a Sunday picnic.
So in 10 seconds, you feel that the criticism leveled against the JSC was unwarranted, because some have described this process as shambolic and saying that you didn't appear as the JSC to know what you were doing.
Well, it's a free country, Bongiwe. So if people some describe it as excellent, but maybe they don't have the decibels like those who are criticizing. But the criticism is not unwanted. It's good. That's what a democracy is all about. We will, when we have our workshop, take it all to heart and, like everyone else, seek to improve what we do. But we cannot, stop people from criticizing. The criticism must just have a scientific and fair basis, not just be, people's subjective hurt maybe at the outcomes.
All right. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and we'll continue then to see what you, as the JSC, then improve upon, as you say that you're going to be taking some of this on board and look at the work that you then do going forward. Thank you for that. That was Adv Dali Mpofu, who speaks for the JSC.